Science fiction is an enormously diverse genre, and it is one that I have always loved. I grew up adoring Star Wars before converting to an obsessive Trekkie as an adult, and my favorite book is Dune: Messiah. If you've only read the first book of that series, you are seriously missing out on what makes it so special, though I will admit the books beyond this one get a little bit wacky. But my first love when it comes to science fiction wasn't Star Trek or even Star Wars, and I certainly wasn't reading Dune at 4 years old.
He felt his mouth open, holding, clinging to the girder shape of ecstasy.
No, my introduction to the world of starships, interplanetary battles, and alien races was a little game I would shove into my 64 on an almost daily basis. It's a game I've returned to time and time again over the last 20 years, and unlike many games I enjoyed as a child, it's still just as fun to play even as an adult. So today, I want to dive in and talk about what makes Star Fox 64 a true masterpiece. This game is well known even among those who have never played it. It's been memed to death, and I guarantee you've been exposed to at least one of Peppy Hare's wisdoms, even if you don't know it. But Star Fox 64 deserves a legacy beyond the memes. We've all heard of games being so bad they killed their own series, and that makes sense. But Star Fox 64 did the opposite. The sheer magnitude of its greatness made it an impossible act to follow, and the series has honestly kind of floundered since then. The follow-ups couldn't quite meet expectations, so the franchise resorted to just reliving its glory days in sad perpetuity. But none of that can ever tarnish 64's luster. It stands as a shining achievement, and we're going to talk about all the things that I think make it so special. But first, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, or leaving a comment. I'm very new to YouTube, and I can't tell you how much it would mean to me. I live for the feedback. But enough about that. It's time to discover what makes Star Fox 64 one of the best games ever made. Upon powering up the game, you're greeted by a beautiful cutscene introducing the main characters and the setup for the game. This is the Great Fox, the Star Fox team's mothership and base of operations. It doesn't have much of an in-game presence, usually only showing up at the beginning or end of missions, but I love it. As it's the first thing you see, it establishes the visual identity of the game well, and it looks quite cool, ranking pretty highly on my list of fictional starships. We hear a message from General Pepper, a call for help. Corneria, a peaceful Earth-like planet in the Lilat system, has been attacked by the armies of Andross, an evil genius and former Cornerian scientist. The camera pans and we see that the Great Fox is already en route to the embattled planet, and then we're introduced to each member of the Star Fox team. This is where the heart of the game lies. This is about the most iconic, endearing, and memorable cast of characters you could ask for, thanks almost entirely to the brilliant performances of the voice actors. And I mean that wholeheartedly. The dialogue in this game is executed perfectly. It's goofy and childish and over the top, but in a truly heartfelt, earnest way that makes it ridiculously charming and endlessly quotable. Star Fox takes itself just seriously enough, the perfect balance of kid-friendly fun and simple but engaging storytelling. The personalities of every character in the game, even the little one-off villains, are vibrant and unique. But the real stars of the show are, of course, Star Fox. Slippy Toad is young and inexperienced, but his technological genius can be helpful in a pinch. Falco Lombardi is a sharp-tongued hotshot with quite a chip on his shoulder and a heart of gold underneath it all. Peppy Hare is the most experienced of the group, having been close friends with Fox's father. He supports the team with his intuition, tidbits of wisdom, and of course, his southern charm.
It's quiet. Too quiet.
Finally, there's Fox McCloud, ace pilot and leader of the team. We'll talk more about each of the characters as we go along, but I wanted to go ahead and introduce them, as I think they are the most important part of the experience. The cutscene ends with the team jumping in their R-Wings, and we gotta pause again because just look at these things. R-Wings have a cool factor that is off the charts. They're visually exciting with a simple look but surprisingly complex design. The wings can fold back for more speed or out for maneuverability, and this is actually reflected in the gameplay. The glowing flame in the back changes color based on whether it's flying in atmosphere or space, and its weaponry is extremely robust. Flying one of these was my childhood dream, and in my personal experience, they outclass anything Star Wars has to offer. After the cutscene, we're taken to the title screen as a triumphant fanfare plays. The music for Star Fox was written by Koji Kondo, who is more widely known for his work on the Mario and Zelda series. The soundtrack here isn't as much of a standout as something like Ocarina of Time, but it fits perfectly and really backs up the gameplay, almost like incidental music. Even so, the main Star Fox theme is a classic, a heroic anthem that matches the attitude of the game and its characters perfectly. From here, we can access the menu and start the game, which plays an opening narration.
Corneria, fourth planet of the Lilat system.
This is where we get the background information for the story and characters. Andross is a scientist who is exiled to Venom for his previous destructive acts. 5 years later, General Pepper grows suspicious of his actions there and contracts a group of mercenaries to investigate. This is the original Star Fox team, consisting of James McCloud, Peppy Hare, and Pigma Dengar, who betrays the team and joins Andross when they arrive at Venom. James is killed in the battle, and Peppy barely escapes with his life and returns to Corneria. Years later, Andross puts his plans of vengeance and domination into motion and invades, sweeping across the Lilat system with his armies and technology, culminating with an attack on Corneria itself. In this hour of need, General Pepper calls upon Star Fox once again. It's now under the leadership of James's son, Fox McCloud, and he is joined by his mentor Peppy and his friends Slippy and Falco. It's up to them to save the system, pushing back against Andross's forces one battle at a time. After this information is delivered, we're introduced to a map of the Lilat system, which is also our game map. The goal of the game is to get from Corneria to Venom and defeat Andross. There are a total of 16 stages, but you will only visit 7 in each playthrough, including Corneria. Star Fox 64 is all about replayability, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But first, what is it like to actually play this game? Star Fox 64 is a rail shooter, with most of the levels consisting of you flying straight forward through obstacles and enemies. You can control your position on the screen, and you can speed up or slow down, but most of the time you're stuck moving forward. But this is not just a simple point-and-shoot situation. Star Fox introduces so many mechanics that spice up the gameplay and make it a complex, engaging, and extremely fun experience. You can flip your R-Wing from side to side using the L and Z buttons, allowing you to take much tighter turns. Tapping L or Z repeatedly will execute the infamous barrel roll, which deflects incoming enemy fire. I know people like to point out that this maneuver is not, in fact, a barrel roll, instead resembling something known as like an aileron roll or something, but I don't want to hear it. If Peppy says it's a barrel roll, then by gosh, it is a barrel roll, and don't you ever question his wisdom again. Other flight abilities include boosting and braking, both of which require a short recharge period, and a somersault, useful for collecting multiple items at once or positioning yourself behind tailing enemies. And then there's all range mode, which frees you from the linear progression of most levels and allows you to fly around freely. This is usually saved for boss fights, but there are a few levels that take place entirely in all range mode. While in this mode, you have access to an additional ability, the U-turn, which is exactly what it sounds like. Attacking is simple. Tap the A button to fire the R-Wing's lasers. This is more than adequate to clear most levels, and you can upgrade the laser by collecting these items. Picking up one gets you twin lasers, and a second will upgrade them to hyper lasers, increasing your damage exponentially. Just make sure you don't crash or take too much damage, or you might lose a wing and your upgrades with it. But if you really want to master this game, you'll have to utilize the R-Wing's additional weaponry. By holding the A button, you will charge a homing laser, which locks onto the enemies and creates a small explosion to destroy multiple targets at once. The other armament the R-Wing has to offer is the Smart Bomb, a powerful explosive that can wipe out entire squadrons and shred tougher enemies. This is a limited resource though, so make sure you
Use bomb wisely.
But a simple breakdown of the mechanics doesn't do justice to what makes this game so enjoyable. It's immersive in a way a game this old has no business being. The relationships between the characters feel quite real, and the danger Andross presents is palpable. Despite not appearing until the end of the game, he's an incredibly intimidating force. You're constantly hearing about him, about his destructive deeds and evil intentions. His influence is everywhere, and the immense devastation he has wreaked on the Lilat system is both tragic and horrifying. He's built up over the game as a looming, unstoppable force, and when you finally come face to face with him, it is properly terrifying. I was scared to death of Andross as a kid, and I will never forget the sense of achievement I felt when I finally defeated him after spending the first decade of my life trying and failing. This game is not easy, and there are times when I struggle with it even now. This makes the bonds you forge with your allies even more meaningful. Their playful banter never gets old, and seeing the team become closer and more confident is always satisfying. The performances delivered by the voice actors provide a slew of great moments, both comical and impactful. Each villain has a surprisingly unique and strident personality, which is exponentially more impressive when you consider that every character in the game is voiced by the same 7 voice actors. They add so much heart to the game, elevating it from a simple rail shooter to a fun and enthralling space adventure. Lissa Brown captures Slippy's playful, naive innocence masterfully, and I find myself laughing at her delivery all the time.
You're not getting away that easy!
Bill Johns made Falco a fan favorite to this day, and the sheer attitude he gives the character is endlessly entertaining.
Time for a little payback.
And then there's Rick may he rest in peace, who gave life to one of my favorite characters in all of fiction.
You okay? Hold together just a bit further.
Peppy Hare is just the best. I'm from Arkansas, which, for those of you who don't know, is a state right in the middle of the American South. So I'm very used to getting fairly negative representation in media.
Your tongue's flapping, but no noise is coming out of your big mouth.
Southerners are often depicted as evil megapastors, sleazy car salesmen, cross-eyed country bumpkins who couldn't tell you what year it is, or some horrible combination of the three. So, I'm always excited to see Southerners who are competent, good people, and man, if Peppy isn't good people, no one in this world is.
Fuck, you're okay.
Jay Green, Jock Blaney, and David White contributed many of the voices for the side characters, and some of those performances are just as legendary as the main cast.
Ah, so this is Star Fox.
But my favorite performance in the game has to be that of Fox McCloud, provided by Mike West.
I'll do my best. Andros won't have his way with me.
It's almost dorky, in a way, with this high-pitched affect that borders on nerdy.
Let's rock and roll!
But his goofiness just adds to his personality. His confident heroism is all the more charming because of it, and he ends up being unironically very cool.
Who are you guys?
We're Star Fox.
He never feels like a parody or a joke, the perfect balance of fun and seriousness, just like the game itself. To this day, Fox McCloud is my favorite video game character of all time, and trust me, I know what a strong statement that is. All of this to say, there's a magic to Star Fox 64 that goes beyond the gameplay itself. It's not just a game, it's an adventure. Even now, all these years later, as a sad and jaded adult, Star Fox hasn't lost its magic for me, which is not something I can say for very many games. Playing through it still feels like a childlike adventure to me, and I think one of the main reasons for that is its replayability. You will never play the same game of Star Fox 64 twice. Almost every level has multiple ways to complete it. Finishing Corneria normally by defeating Granga will take you to Medio, but if you fly through all these stone arches, Falco will lead you through a waterfall to a secret boss, allowing you to travel to Sector Y instead. Challenges like this exist in all but a few levels, and some of them can be quite tricky, like Zonus or Sector X. In this way, you can customize the path you take through the Lylat system, resulting in a gameplay loop that never gets stale. There are 25 different possible routes you could take to Venom, and each one tells a slightly different story, involving different challenges, triumphs, heroes, and villains. But this isn't the only way the game boosts its replayability. Each level has a medal you can earn. To achieve this, you must keep your teammates from retreating while destroying a certain number of enemies. This is no simple task, and a few of the medals are incredibly difficult to get. This gives you an incentive to try missions over and over again until you get medals on all of the levels. Once you achieve that, the game mixes it up further by introducing Expert Mode. This adds tons of enemies to each level and increases the difficulty. If you take even one hit to one of your wings, it will be destroyed, reducing your maneuverability and removing any laser upgrades you may have collected. Fox also dons his father's shades during Expert Mode, as if he wasn't cool enough already. There are medals to collect on Expert Mode as well, though it is a bit easier due to the increased number of enemies. All of this comes together to create a game that is endlessly replayable. Depending on the route you choose, you can beat the game in anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour and a half, making it the perfect game to just sit down and play here and there when you're in the mood for some spacefaring fun. I've talked a lot about the game in general, but I want to dive in and talk about each of the levels as well, and point out some of my favorite moments. So, to avoid turning this section of the video into a glorified walkthrough, I decided to do this as a tier list. We're going to go in order from Corneria to Venom, discussing what each level has to offer and demonstrating some of the things that make Star Fox 64 such an incredible video game experience. And for the record, I think every level in the game is great, so the lowest I'll go is B tier. But without further ado, let's rank all 16 levels in the game, starting with Corneria. Corneria is literally a perfect beginning level. It sets up the game's formula, introduces the main characters, and offers opportunities to familiarize yourself with the mechanics. I like that it isn't just a slow and overbearing tutorial, and in fact, that would be extremely detrimental to the game, considering that it's meant to be played over and over. There is an optional tutorial you can play through if you need a more in-depth explanation of the game's mechanics, meaning Corneria is free to stand on its own as a fully fledged level. It opens with the Star Fox team checking in and preparing for battle as they head towards Corneria City. This is a really nice looking level, and sets a high standard for future levels. The half-destroyed city is impactful and visually striking, and effectively demonstrates the threat Andross poses to the Lilat system. There are several opportunities to interact with your teammates. Slippy gets himself into trouble before you even reach Corneria City, and later on Falco overextends and needs a little help from Fox. I really like these little interactions, and they continue throughout the whole game. It's interesting because almost all of them are scripted. Slippy will always need your help right here every time you play. But they feel real, and they fit very naturally within the flow of the levels. The characters react to your actions and comment on your performance, which keeps it feeling fresh. Corneria also has a couple of great villains, and though the boss fights themselves are unsurprisingly easy, their personalities make them extremely memorable. Especially Granga.
Those who cross Andross will die! No! My Emperor! I failed you!
Corneria easily earns a place in S tier and sets a gold standard for the levels going forward. Beating Corneria normally will take you to Meteo, a dense asteroid field where Andross has laid an ambush for the Star Fox team. On its surface, it may seem like a basic boring space level, but it's one of my favorites. There are a total of 5 levels that take place in space, but they all feel completely distinct from one another, and this demonstrates the diversity and creativity in the level design. Meteo is by far the simplest of the space levels, but that's not a criticism. The dense clusters of asteroids and huge rock formations are fun to navigate, and dispatching Andross's minions is always satisfying. It's one of the easiest levels in the game, but it's elevated by the stellar presentation and atmosphere. The music is tense and exciting, and it just perfectly captures that space adventure feeling that I love so much. Towards the end of the level, there's a moment where, upon emerging from this cavern, the planet Fortuna looms into view, which is likely your next destination. This is easy to overlook, but it's a testament to the work the creators behind this game put in to make it special. This isn't the only time in the game something like this happens. In a later level, Venom looms larger and larger in the background as you approach, and it's just one of those little details that add up to make this game such a fun and immersive experience. Meteo isn't the most dazzling or unique level Star Fox 64 has to offer, but it's a clear example of what the game does best, and I'm not ashamed to say I have a lot of nostalgia for this one in particular. So if I get to have one biased pick, it's gonna be this one, S+ tier. If you take Corneria's alternate route by flying through the waterfall, you'll end up instead at Sector Y. This is another space level, but it's nothing like Meteo. This is a heated battle between Andross's armada and the Cornerian battle fleet, one that Andross is winning handily. The Cornerian fleet is getting decimated, and it's up to Star Fox to step in and save the day. As far as gameplay goes, it's not one of my favorites. The pace is a little slow, and these robot enemies are kind of annoying, and the boss is somewhat lackluster. However, the spectacle of flying through a battle between space armadas more than makes up for that, and it really is up to you to save the fleet. If you kill enough enemies, the Cornerian battle fleet will accompany you as you leave the sector. If you don't, they will be absent, presumably destroyed in the battle. It isn't the best mission the game has to offer, but I can't justify a place lower than A. After Meteo, you'll most likely be headed to Fortuna, where Andross has occupied a Cornerian base. Star Fox is here to liberate it, but it's guarded by a battalion of enemy fighters. In the middle of the battle, the enemy decides to destroy the base instead of letting it fall back under Cornerian control, and Fox's reaction to this is priceless.
Gee, can anyone take care of it?
This level is actually extremely basic, both in terms of gameplay and presentation, and would probably be at the bottom of my list, except for one thing. This is where Starwolf is introduced. This is a rival gang of mercenaries under the employ of Andross, specifically tasked with destroying Star Fox. Its members include Andrew Oikony, the nephew of Andros, Leon Powalski, a smug lizard with an impressively high opinion of himself, and Pigma Dengar, the traitorous bastard himself. They are led by Wolf O'Donnell, whose piloting skills are matched only by his disdain for Fox McCloud. They round out the cast beautifully, their snide, arrogant remarks contrasting sharply with the attitudes of the Star Fox team, and the voice performances are incredible as usual.
My beautiful reward!
They serve as a recurring foe, showing up at the most inopportune times doing Andros' dirty work. I would always lose here as a young child, and I still remember the first time I defeated them and exacted my revenge. You can actually fail this mission if you take too long to defeat Starwolf. A timer will begin to count down, and if it runs out, Star Fox is forced to retreat and the base is destroyed. Instead of just starting over and trying again, you simply move on, forced to accept the loss, making the level stakes feel much higher. This dynamic factor and Starwolf's presence bolster Fortuna's placement, but it still lands an A tier for me. If you take the hidden warp zone in Meteo, or fail to destroy 100 enemies in Sector Y, you'll find yourself at Katina, where Fox reunites with Bill, a friend from his academy days and a commander in the Cornerian Air Force. Star Fox joins forces with the Cornerians to defend their base. This is another level with somewhat lackluster gameplay that is elevated by its incredible presentation. It's actually very similar to Fortuna, but instead of a bomb being planted at the base, a massive mothership arrives, flooding the area with enemies as it approaches the base. Once it gets there, it begins charging its core laser, and if you don't destroy it in time, the base is destroyed. Just like Fortuna, the mission is a failure and you're forced to move on. The destruction of either the base or the giant saucer are both really cool looking, and this is one of my favorite bosses in the game. Still, it doesn't quite live up to many of the other levels it's competing with, so I'm going to make it our first B tier. If you are able to destroy 100 enemies in Sector Y, you'll be going to Aquas, which is perhaps the most unique mission in the game. You'll be piloting not the R-Wing, but a submarine called the Blue Marine, through the dangerous, pollution-infested oceans of Aquas as you hunt down one of Andros' bioweapons. I'll be honest, the Blue Marine is nowhere near as fun as the R-Wing, or even the Landmaster tank we'll see in later levels. This was my least favorite level for a long time, but I appreciate it a bit more now. Even if I don't prefer the Blue Marine, the change of pace adds some variety to the experience. The music is good, the level itself is beautiful, and the ocean getting darker as you go deeper into the pollution is a nice touch. The boss is one of the more interesting fights in the game, and can be pretty tough if you don't know what you're doing. I still have to put Aquas in B tier, but it's a lot better than I gave credit for as a kid. Successfully defending the bases in either Katina or Fortuna allows you to travel to Solar, and funny story, it was only in the writing of this video, after 20 years of playing this game, that I finally realized that this was a star. I always just thought it was a lava planet, and that it was called Solar because it was hot and bright. Like a star. But anyway, Star Fox is here to hide their approach to Macbeth, where they plan to launch a surprise attack on the enemy base there. Solar itself is really cool. I mean, flying across the surface of a star is peak science fiction fun. You're constantly taking damage, especially if you fly too close to the lava. This goes for your teammates too, which means it can be difficult to score the medal here. It's a relatively short level, which keeps the constant heat damage from getting annoying. The boss is one of Andros' most intimidating bioweapons, surging out of the lava and swiping at Fox with his huge bladed arms. Really cool stuff, S tier. Sector X is where you'll go if you fail either Fortuna or Katina. This space junkyard is littered with wreckage and debris and infested with Andros' minions and traps. There are rumors of a secret weapon being hidden here, and Star Fox is here to find it and eliminate it. This is one of my favorite levels, both in terms of presentation and gameplay. The eerie music combined with the derelict space junk makes for an almost spooky atmosphere of mystery as you search for the secret weapon. The debris is also fun to navigate, and there are alternate paths you can take to get to your destination. The weapon turns out to be Spyborg, an automated, almost humanoid space robot. It's a pretty cool battle, and I like how creepy they made this thing. Sector X is the only level in the game to have 3 alternate endings. If Slippy is present during the fight, he will attempt to make an attack run of his own. Being that it's Slippy, it goes quite badly, and his R-Wing goes down on a nearby planet.
Slippy!
The next mission will be to rescue him. If you beat the boss fast enough though, Slippy won't have the chance to get into trouble. There's also a warp zone that requires you to shoot open all these gates, which is an extremely tricky maneuver. If you came here from Katina, however, Bill will drop in and help out. I just love how dynamic and creative Sector X is, and it's a shoo-in for S+. If you go the Aquas route, your next mission will be Zonus, another of my favorites. Zonus has been transformed into a literal ocean of toxic waste, the byproduct of Andross's relentless war industry. The Star Fox team is disgusted by the harm that's been done to the planet, and I really like this kind of storytelling. A literal ocean of waste is a bit on the nose as far as environmentalist messaging goes, but I love how over the top it is, and it really works in this setting. I mentioned it earlier, but this game does such a good job of establishing Andross as a villain without even showing you his face. The damage he's inflicted on the Lilat system speaks for itself, and Zonus is a prime example of that. Halfway through the level, a woman named Kat shows up in a starfighter of her own, offering and requesting help in turn. As far as I can tell, she's the only female character in the game, which is, fine. Star Fox 64 is a game about a bunch of boys flying around in starships, and there's nothing wrong with that. But as she is the only female character, I wouldn't blame you for finding her representation a little lacking. I think she's pretty cool, but I would understand if female players thought her a bit too stereotypically girly.
Beautiful. I would kiss you for that.
But anyway, Zonus also has an awesome boss fight, and it might actually be my favorite in the game. All in all, Zonus is one of the best levels in the game, and easily earns its place in S+ tier. After Slippy's misguided attempt to single-handedly defeat Spyborg, he ends up crashing on Titania, and it's up to his teammates to rescue him. I expected this one to be bottom of the list, but going back to it, I was surprised by how much I liked it. The unique premise of saving Slippy adds some drama to the story, a little break from pursuing Andross.
I can't leave Slippy hanging.
It has a very strong visual identity, with the surface of Titania being an arid wasteland full of monsters and huge skeletons. The search for Slippy is suspenseful, and seeing the team back together again is quite satisfying. The Landmaster tank isn't quite as fun to pilot as the R-Wing, but similarly to the Blue Marine, it adds some variety to the gameplay. I like how it adapts controls you're already familiar with and applies them in a new way. Titania is a level I don't often go to, but I have a new appreciation for it, and I think it deserves a place in S tier. Macbeth is also a Landmaster mission, and you can get here from Solar, Zonus, and Sector X if you manage to steal Slippy's thunder. Andross has turned Macbeth into a production center for his army, and Star Fox is here to put an end to his factories. This is an amazing level, with some of the best presentation and interactivity the game has to offer. It takes place along a railway, where a train carrying supplies and armaments for Andross is traveling to a weapons factory. Star Fox's mission is to destroy the train and put a stop to as much of Andross's manufacturing as possible. For the duration of the level, the train is attacking you and trying to slow you down and escape, while the engineer hurls insults.
What's wrong? Come a little closer.
This makes the level exciting and extremely fun, as you wreck the train one car at a time and pursue the fleeing engine. The alternate ending challenge is perhaps the best in the game. As you reach the end of the level and the engineer launches the boss as a last resort, you'll come across these signal towers. If you manage to shoot all 8 of them, a switch will appear, which will change the tracks, sending the train hurtling down the tracks where it crashes into a factory with a massive explosion.
No! Give them way! I say, stop it!
This is not only fun and challenging to pull off, but it's incredibly satisfying to see the train and factory destroyed like this. It feels like you've really struck a blow to Andross as the tide slowly turns against him. This makes Macbeth a standout level, and I always enjoy returning to it. S+ tier. Destroying all the searchlights at Zonus, or using the Sector X warp zone, will take you to Sector Z, where an ambush is waiting. Star Fox scrambles to defend the Great Fox, but suddenly waves of missiles appear, heading straight for the ship. Sector Z is pretty cool in concept. I like the idea of Andross striking back at Star Fox, and it's fairly intense. You can fail this level as well if you allow a missile to strike the Great Fox, which will then be missing a wing for the rest of the game. Unfortunately, this ends up being my personal least favorite level in the game, which is a shame because I loved it as a kid. If you take damage, you can fly into the Great Fox's hangar for a repair, and that was just mind-blowing to me. That's the kind of dynamic interactivity that makes this game so fun. Sadly, Sector Z just doesn't do enough to reach the level of its competition. It's another all-range mode mission, and in general I like those less than the on-rails levels. But in most cases, there's something that elevates these levels, like Starwolf at Fortuna or the epic mothership battle at Katina. This one is just a little boring, in spite of the interesting premise. I haven't talked much about earning medals, but in most levels, it's a simple matter of just doing good, getting combos and destroying bosses quickly, and remembering to use bombs wisely. Some levels require you to perform specific actions to have a shot at scoring high enough, like destroying the weapons factory at Macbeth. On Sector Z, you have to destroy all 6 missiles to have a chance at the 100-point requirement, but this isn't as simple as it sounds. Your allies also shoot the missiles, which is a fun detail, but if one of them gets the final shot, you get 0 points. This is even worse if you come from Zonus, as Kat will join in the defense, and she does not hold back. If you miss out on even one missile, it's going to be pretty tough to hit that mark, making it potentially the most annoying medal in the game to get. This combined with the relatively bland gameplay makes it the only Star Fox 64 level I actually don't like, so I have to put it in B tier. That being said, if this is the worst the game has to offer, that just speaks to the excellent standard it has set for itself with its other levels. Bolse is the last level before Venom if you come from Titania or fail to destroy the weapons depot on Macbeth. It's a defense satellite that must be destroyed before taking the fight to Venom and Andross himself. This is my favorite all-range map in the game, and it's the complete opposite of Sector Z. It's unique and creatively implemented with a fun premise. It begins with you having to destroy these shield generators. The satellite is actually spinning for this portion of the stage, making it tricky to navigate. Once that's done, the satellite's core is exposed and vulnerable, but Starwolf shows up just in time to get in the way as usual. This is the best of the 3 Starwolf fights in my opinion, and having to deal with them while also trying to destroy the core is an engaging challenge. It works really well as a prelude to the final battle, and definitely belongs in S tier. Successfully defending the Great Fox in Sector Z or destroying the weapons factory at Macbeth allows you to travel to Area 6, or the Venom Air Defense Zone, and honestly, if I have to pick just one, I think this is the best level Star Fox 64 has to offer. It's an intense and a high-octane battle against the toughest enemies in Andross's army, and he throws everything he has at you. It's truly exciting and incredibly satisfying, decimating squadrons of fighters, shredding defense platforms, and wrecking massive battle cruisers. The enemy commanders get more and more desperate, panicking as you run the blockade and get closer and closer to Venom.
Fire! Fire! Don't let them go! The last line has been breached!
These guys are crazy!
Andross even contacts Fox directly for the first time, personally taunting and hurling insults at him.
You can never defeat me.
The boss is one of, if not the most challenging fight in the game, a final hurdle before Venom itself. Area 6 is the perfect combination of Star Fox 64's incredible gameplay and awesome presentation, and it's hard to put into words what makes it so much fun. It's easily top tier, and it's a perfect example of this game's excellence. All that's left now is Venom, Andross's stronghold. Venom is in fact 2 separate levels, and which one you get is determined by the route you take to get there. Coming from Bolse will get you the first version, which is fairly straightforward. Venom is a dour, barren wasteland, perfect for a monster like Andross. Swarms of enemies pour out of the ground and canyon walls, and huge spires of rock launch up to bar your way. It's a good final level, one last push to break through Andross's final defenses. After chasing a tricky boss down a deadly corridor, Fox descends alone into Andross's lair to face him at last. This final showdown is as frightening as it is bizarre. Andross's massive, disembodied head floats before you, swinging his hands and shooting bolts of lightning from his fingers. As a kid, I always chose to believe that this was a ship or a robot that Andross was piloting. I mean, it makes sense that someone as egotistical as him would create something like this, and honestly, I just didn't want to consider the alternative. But I think I was wrong about that. I've mentioned a couple times that Andross is a genius scientist, but he's actually a specific kind of scientist. Multiple times throughout the game, you're tasked with eliminating bioweapons, grotesque fusions of biology and technology. This is Andross's specialty, and I think that's what we're dealing with here. He's become so entrenched in his evil machinations that he's transformed his own body into a bioweapon. If true, this is pretty disturbing stuff for a kid's game, and it actually gets worse, which we'll get to in a moment. Andross is not an incredibly difficult battle, but it more than makes up for that in sheer spectacle. Andross's model is incredibly impressive for a 64 game. He's quite emotive, able to make facial expressions and follow you with his creepy eyes. It's clear a lot of work went into making this an impactful moment, and it certainly had an impact on me the first time I encountered it. Once you destroy the hands and deal enough damage to his eyes, his face explodes, revealing a robotic skull underneath. Destroying that puts an end to Andross once and for all. Supposedly. Fox beats a hasty retreat to rejoin his squad, and the credits roll as they head back to Corneria. If you take a route that includes Katina or Zonas, Star Fox will be joined by Bill and Kat respectively. They arrive at Corneria and are honored by General Pepper, who implores them to join the army, probably to get out of paying that mercenary bill. Fox isn't having it though, and the heroes promptly leave, running back to their R-Wings as the Great Fox takes to the skies once more. They fly off into the horizon, and all is well. Or is it? If you beat the game this way, Andross's face will appear here and laugh, hinting that you may not have beaten him as finely as you thought. This brings us to Venom's second variant, which you get to by going through Area 6. This version of the final level sees you facing off against Starwolf one last time. Their ships have received massive upgrades, and they've learned to barrel roll, but that still isn't enough to stop Star Fox. After beating them, Fox goes straight for Andross. The fight is the same, but when you beat it this time, his whole head explodes, leaving just a brain and 2 eyes. So, the other Andross fight is just a decoy, and if you go that way, you didn't really beat him. If you really want to destroy him once and for all, you have to do it this way. So yeah, the second stage of the fight is literally a battle with Andross's huge disembodied brain and eyeballs. I told you it got worse. This can be a pretty hard battle. Andross's flying brain is invincible except for this part, which I guess is the cerebellum. Getting too close will get your R-Wing sucked into these disgusting tendrils that wreck your wings and deal massive damage. If you manage to deal enough damage though, Andross will self-destruct in an attempt to take Fox with him, and then his brain erupts in a massive explosion. How did this game get rated KA? You literally kill Oh. Fox is almost destroyed in the brain explosion, but suddenly a voice speaks to him and another R-Wing appears to lead him out. This is none other than James McCloud himself, Fox's late father. He leads Fox out of the collapsing labyrinth of Andross's lair, encouraging him and offering familiar wisdom.
Never give up.
As father and son reach the surface, he says these parting words,
You've become so strong, Fox.
And disappears. Fox at first searches the skies for his dad, looking for one last glimpse of him, then seems to accept that he isn't there anymore and lets him go.
What's wrong, Fox? Nothing. Nothing's wrong.
I'm not gonna lie, this is always an emotional moment for me. Maybe it's the nostalgia or Koji Kondo's bittersweet melody here, but it always gets me. From here, the credits play out as normal, except Andross does not appear at the end, truly gone for good. Both of these levels are excellent finales to a superb game. In terms of gameplay, I actually rather prefer Venom 1. The onslaught of enemies and tricky flight sections are just a lot of fun. Definitely S tier. But Venom 2 provides such a satisfying and emotional conclusion that I have to rate it S+. It's just perfection. After the credits of either ending, you log your score and present General Pepper with the bill for your services, which is based on the number of enemies destroyed. He reacts differently to smaller or larger amounts, and at the highest level, he just lets out a flabbergasted,
What?
So here's our final tier list. If you've played the game, I'd love to hear what levels are your favorite. Let me know what you think I got wrong here. If you haven't played the game, do so. It is so worth your time, and I guarantee you'll find something to love about it. It's on the Switch Online 64 expansion pack, so you may already have access to it. I used this version to record for the sake of convenience, but I think Star Fox 64 really shines on its original hardware, so if you have the opportunity, I think that's the ideal way to play. Hopefully, I've been able to express what makes Star Fox 64 such a special game. It's a timeless masterpiece, and my childhood wouldn't have been complete without it. If you've never played it before, or you've written it off as a kid's game, I urge you to go back and give it a try. It holds up over 25 years later, and I think it's just as good a game now as it was back then. It's another example of Shigeru Miyamoto's ability to manifest irresistible characters and engaging worlds, coupled with Nintendo's commitment to highly polished and endlessly fun gameplay. It's crafted in a way that is nothing short of genius, and there's really nothing else like it. As much as I would love to see this series return to form, there's also a part of me that almost feels like there's really no need for it. This is Star Fox, and I struggle to see how anything could meet, much less surpass the standard it has set for the franchise. That said, the minute a new Star Fox game gets announced, you know I'm going to be all over that. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and please consider subscribing to the channel, liking the video, or commenting. Every little thing counts, and I greatly appreciate it. You can also check out my Sonic the Hedgehog series. At the time of this video's release, I've just finished Sonic 3 and Knuckles and will be moving on to Sonic Adventure soon. But until next time, see you later and take care.